So this is a very cool experience where you can explore several of the different worlds from the Hobbit films. There's interactive books, there's games. If you go to thehobbit.com/Middle-earth, you can check it all out. It's a very cool thing that Google and Warner Brothers have put together. So for all the Hobbit fans out there, after you're done watching this Hangout, go over and check that out. Now it is my pleasure to introduce to you 3 of the members of the cast and crew of The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug. First to my left, playing Tauriel, Evangeline Lilly. I know, I've practiced. I wanted to get it right.
You succeeded.
Nice to see you.
You too.
To my right, of course, the director, co-writer, co-producer of the film, Peter Jackson. Welcome.
Hey. Hi.
And to his right, playing Thorin Oakenshield, Richard Armitage. Welcome.
Hey.
Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Now we have 5 lucky fans from around the world who have been selected to participate in this Hangout, so let me introduce them. We have Katie in New York, we have Chan in South Korea, Jennifer in Boston, Jesper in Denmark, and Bonjour Pierre in Paris. So welcome to all of you 5.
Hello.
Thank you.
Hi.
Hello.
Katie,
Hi, guys.
Katie, I want to start with you. I'm sure you have a question for these guys. Take it away.
I do, yes. All right, so my question's for everybody. And were there any practical jokes that you guys played on set, or were there any kind of pranks? And who was the biggest practical joker?
There's always got to be practical jokers on the set.
I don't know. I mean, I love practical jokes, but I tend to be too busy to do anything. There was one practical joke that I did on Ian McKellen that I because he's always a good target. Because he had a habit of snoozing. If he had to wait for half an hour or something for us to adjust lights and cameras, he'd be sitting. He wouldn't leave the set. He wouldn't go to his trailer. He'd just sit in the corner and sort of have a snooze. I admired his ability to just shut his eyes and sleep at any moment. I mean, I might do it before this is over, actually. I'm sure I won't. The questions will be so great. It's been a tough few weeks, folks. And anyway, I saw Ian snoozing, and I thought, okay, what can I do? I've got to do something fun. And I snuck up behind him, and I just said in my loudest, most authoritative voice, and action! And like he jumped up in the air and straightened up. I don't think he even knew for a moment what country he was in, what film he was in. He didn't know what the beard was about. It was like he was bewildered and just, that was funny.
Was he angry or was he a good sport about it?
He's always a good sport.
Okay.
He's always a good sport.
What about you guys? I guess when you're new on the franchise, you don't want to be the Joker. You want to be professional, right, Evangeline?
To a certain degree, yeah.
Well, no. She was a Joker pretty quick.
But practical jokes, like Peter said, I mean, we were driving a pretty hard schedule, and oftentimes when you're filming, one of the things that's tricky about finding space for practical jokes is that the best practical jokes are when the cameras are rolling. But when the cameras are rolling, you're wasting precious production time.
Yes.
So I mean, I don't think I actively participated in any waste of time, right, boss?
Of course not.
But I know Orlando, who I worked with a lot, he's sort of known for gagging and playing jokes on people, and I think that's a hangover from Lord of the Rings when those boys were constantly playing practical jokes on each other.
They were.
Richard, were you immune?
Yeah, when I was working, I remember the only thing I can think of that was a bit of a joke was when Martin brought his little girl and little boy to the set. They were fascinated with the prosthetic hands, so his littlest is really tiny, so I let her wear my prosthetic hands, and she was walking over to Martin, kind of waving at him in the middle of the scene with these enormous hands on, which made him corpse, and that was kind of sweet.
I love that. Thank you, Katie, for that question.
Thank you.
Chan, I want to take a question from you in South Korea.
Hi, this is for Peter Jackson.
Hey.
From a scale of 1 to 10, how epic will be the Battle of the Five Armies be? And please elaborate on the number that you chose.
Ooh.
The number of the epic scale that I choose.
Yes.
Well, if I wasn't a good salesman, if I had to be a salesman, I'd say, wow, it's 12 plus, 15, 20 plus. I mean, look, it's big. I mean, the interesting thing with the battles, though, is not just the size. I mean, of the battle. It's not the size that counts. It's the I think it's important with a battle is that you keep the storyline going. And in a way, that's a lesson that I picked up off the Lord of the Rings, is that we found when we were cutting together the battle sequences, because you have a lot of footage, you have, you know, lots of second unit footage, you have lots of just fighting, extras fighting, you know, you have lots to choose from. And what we learned back in those days, 10 years ago, was that if you show 3 shots in a row that don't have one of your principal characters in, then you start to zone out of it very, very quickly. In other words, what that means is that you want to see what out of the 10,000, you know, 50,000, however many's fighting, there's only, you know, a few characters, a few people that you actually care about, and that you know, you've got to keep returning to them all the time. And so, because that's your story, the narrative has to drive it through. And I guess if anything, with the Battle of the Five Armies, I sound like I'm promoting next year's movie. Anyway, we can bank, we can store this one away for 12 months later, but if it wasn't going out live. But I think the thing with the Battle of the Five Armies is we tried to have a lot of storylines, some of which are set up in this film, The Desolation of Smaug. A lot of storylines all moving, a lot of characters, a lot of things happening that aren't just about fighting and waving a sword around. There are actually stuff going on that's pretty heavy duty stuff in some cases, and those storylines are sort of weaving all the way through the battle. So the battle is almost secondary to what is happening with our characters. I mean, you guys, both of you, were sort of a part of that, part of those storylines. I mean, yeah.
All right. Jennifer in Boston, what's your question?
Hello, this question is for Richard. So the barrel scene, it looked like it was a lot of fun to shoot, but it also looked a little exhausting and dangerous. So I was wondering if you could talk a little about what shooting that scene in the river was like.
Oh, she wants to know about filming the scene in the river. She said it looked dangerous and exhausting. What was it like to film it?
Yeah, the barrel sequence was we filmed it in really quite a few different locations. One of which was the Pelorus River, and we were free floating in it felt like a fast flowing stream. I mean, when you see it in the picture, it's very.
Don't overhype it, Richard. Come on.
I kind of got caught in a current because Pete was on his mic shouting kind of way deeper because we were looking for Bilbo at that point was under the water, and I was getting a bit cocky, so I was trying to get up to my chest, and the current, the fairly fast flowing current, kind of pulled me under for a second. And I was obviously wearing all the dwarf gear, so I had to be pulled out by 2 stunt guys. And
yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah, I was a little bit drenched.
That is true. Wow. But we had a safety line across the river, so that, you know, the guys couldn't float beyond a certain point if we didn't stop them. But I did wonder if we took the safety line away, how close to Australia they'd get, because the river kind of goes into the ocean in New Zealand, and then there's nothing else but Australia. I thought, wonder if any of these guys would actually reach Australia, and I was tempted to try to find out, but no, we had a film to shoot, unfortunately.
We have a question for you from Google Plus, Evangeline, which is, what is the biggest obstacle when playing an elf? What's the most challenging obstacle to play an elf?
I suppose it's probably different for everybody, but for me, the most challenging obstacle was actually being poised and elegant, because by nature, I'm a little bit of a, I don't know, I guess I'm a bit of a silly person, and I like to screw around and be irreverent and joke around. So to have to shut up for a minute and appear to be elegant and graceful and poised and all those things that an elf is supposed to be was a particular challenge for me.
Okay, Jesper in Denmark, what's your first question?
Yeah, so this is for Evangeline as well. I heard you somewhere that you said that you always wanted to play an elf. Why is that? And did it live up to your expectations?
Well, who doesn't want to play an elf?
I don't want to play an elf.
Not me either. No, thank you. That's too.
Richard is a closet elf.
Dave actually would be an okay elf.
Would I? I've got the ears.
Yeah, you do. No, you'd be okay.
Yeah, I cover mine with a lot of hair. Did it live up to the expectation? It lived up to it in spades. I was transported into Middle Earth for about a year, and every time I would walk on set to a new, incredible set design, I would get giddy, and probably act like a ninny most of the time because I was such a big Tolkien fan and then a huge Lord of the Rings Peter Jackson fan. And the first time I got to put on a set of ears, they brought me 3 pair. There was a small, medium, and a large. And they said, what pair would you like to wear? And I said, I want the big one. They said, no, you've got a tiny little face. Let's put the little ears on. So I said, okay, fine. So they put the little ears on. I said, nah.
How long did that ear process take you every morning?
The ear, it was like half an hour. How long was your process, Richard?
3.5.
Oh.
Not as much as Stephen Hunter, though. I think he was 4. So.
Well, the whole process for me was 2 hours, but that's just because this needed so much work.
It is strange. I mean, I got to say, to be honest, I've spent time with Evangeline more as Tariel than in this current state here. I think this looks weird. The red hair and the ears are what I'm used to seeing. I mean, truly. I spent hours, I spent that, and it's like, I always look at it and I said, oh, okay, it's Evangeline, right.
Yeah, who is this person?
Who is this stranger with this funny hair? And so it's, it's weird. You do see well, Richard as well. I mean, you sort of see the actors, win these personas, and as a director, they that's what I see. I mean, I literally don't see them, until they walk on set, and I say goodbye when they leave the set, and it's sort of like I am used to a certain to talking to Richard and Evangeline looking very different to what they look now.
You particularly, Richard, look so different. It's shocking.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed that transformation, and to save a millisecond in the chair, I did grow my own beard, and it's useful in kind of outside.
Well, it looks better too. It does look better.
Yeah, but you can kind of store things in it as well.
Kind of
like
you
can store a pencil in it, and you can store food in there. I mean,
I know. Yeah, no, you've learned from the master.
Very useful.
Learned from the master. Yep.
I mean, when you have a process that takes 3.5 hours each day, are you ever just wanting to go to bed with part of it on so you don't have to?
I wish they would.
That was
my fantasy. That why don't they all just sleep in this stuff, and they would we'd get them on set earlier in the morning. I mean,
I couldn't wait to rip my wig off at the end of every take. It was heavy, and I had a lot of headaches and a lot of neck pain, and I was like dealing with shoulder issues, and there was nothing. You couldn't have paid me enough money to sleep in that wig.
And you're running around like the action hero that you are in this movie, so it's not you're not just sitting around. You're out and about. Stunt
scenes I think were the hardest, and usually by about sometime just after lunch on a stunt day, I would be in excruciating pain. My head was throbbing.
I mean, both of you worked yourselves to the. I mean, I've seen I've seen both Evangeline and Richard work themselves literally to the point of exhaustion on days that we were doing fight scenes, literally just completely spent.
Wow.
Yeah. Pretty intense.
All right, thank you, Jesper, for the question. And now Pierre in Paris. Hello.
Hello, guys. So I had a question for Peter Jackson, and so 10 years ago, almost day to day, The Return of the King was released worldwide, and in a week it's The Hobbit, the second one. And I was wondering how you felt after being behind the camera and bringing Middle-earth to life 10 years after.
What was the last part of the question? Sorry.
How did you felt after filming the last scene and kind of closing the Middle-earth?
How I felt shooting the last scene. You mean the end? Like how I felt just finishing it all? It's
yeah.
It must have been bittersweet in a way.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was. It's a weird thing for me because I have, once the shoot finishes, for a lot of the people involved, that's the end of the job, essentially. A lot of the actors, the crew, that's the end, that's their last day of work kind of thing. It's the sort of the end. And for me, it's like a new beginning. It's now, okay, now I actually edit the stuff together. I do the visual effects post-production. I take one hat off and put another hat on. And so in some respects, for me, it's always like, okay, well, we've got the shoot finished. Now let's get this stuff cut together and get the film finished. So, excuse me. So, but certainly saying goodbye to friends and people that you have worked with for 18 months. Yeah, I mean, you get to form some really good, close relationships. And, you just have to hope that you can work with the actors again in the future. I mean, you guys, I love to work with you guys any time you want a director, any time you need a director, just give me a call.
Call you up.
Yeah, please do, because...
Peter, there's this project
great,
I'm doing, and there's no director in town.
Sure, hey, I'll be on. I don't care what it is. It's, no, honestly, seriously, you enjoy the relationship of working with people, and you get a shorthand, you get to trust them and they trust you. And when you've got mutual trust, when you can really feel like that you're listening to me and I'm hearing you, and it's like this great sort of mutual exchange, this collaborative exchange happens. It's a wonderful thing. It's great.
And it's surprisingly rare that there is just that natural understanding, and that was something people have asked me many times. What it was like to work with Peter Jackson, and of course I'm honest and tell them it was a little bit of hell. But in all truthfulness, it was one of those situations where Peter and I found most of the time we're looking for exactly the same thing. And when that happens, it takes so much of the work out of it because we're working towards the same goal. And when you have different visions, when an actor comes to set with one vision and the director has another vision, the amount of wasted energy that goes towards just uniting your visions takes a lot away from the process, and that was something I really appreciated in this film with working with Peter. It was almost every single time
we were creating the character together. I mean, it hadn't even been, it wasn't described in the book, of course. So it's because she's original. So it was as much your creation as our creation, and we were kind of just exploring, experimenting, we'll try this, try that, and we found something that really kind of worked pretty cool.
It was so satisfying creatively.
Richard, here's a question for you from the Google+. Someone wants to know, how do you find empathy for Thorin given some of the actions that he does in the movie?
I kind of have to think if he were to stand up in a court of law and defend himself, particularly with certain deals that he reneges on later in the story, and what happens to him when he gets inside the mountain, he becomes really quite irrational and unreasonable. So I often disagree with him. There was one scene I remember when we were outside the secret door entering, and it was a new scene we'd shot in pickups, and Balin says to Thorin, "I fear for you," and it was this guilt trip that he was giving Thorin about letting the burglar into the mountain, and I was having arguments with myself, imaginary arguments with Balin, because he had asked Bilbo to sign the contract, and Bilbo had put his signature at the bottom of that contract, and now he was asking me to sort of save his life, and I was having this debate all the time about, is he right, is he wrong, and I had to believe in his cause, and even in the end of the third film, I still would defend him.
So you're having that debate in your head as Thorin?
Thorin as me arguing with Thorin. And,
I see. Richard arguing with Thorin.
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Right, yeah.
I find even as an audience member, though, that there's something in your performance, and obviously that you were able to connect with in your mind, where Thorin must have won the argument, because I empathize and I get it. I watch Thorin, and even if I wouldn't necessarily do the same thing, I think, but I understand what he's doing and why he's doing it, and it doesn't feel immoral, it just feels like a difficult decision.
It feels like not the decision you'd necessarily make, but you've come to understand the character of Thorin and can understand where it's coming from, why he's making the decision.
Even though that may be a wrong decision, you have to believe in why he's.
I mean, it is a difficult character. Thorin was a tough character because he's relatively unsympathetic in the book, and we didn't want to lose that. Obviously, he does. I mean, part of that is obviously fuels the third movie, but. At the same time, 3 movies with your main dwarf who's like a bit of a dorky. You don't really think, oh my, you just can't do that in the movie. You can't do that. So we had to find the balance of Thorin making the hard and controversial choices that he makes in the book, but at the same time trying to have an audience understand where they come from.
Well, before we finish this up, we have something very cool to show all of you fans out there, which is an exclusive scene that no one has seen yet from the Desolation of Smaug.
Have I seen it?
I would hope that it's going to look familiar to you.
You guys shot at the weekend.
Exactly. It's actually the beginning of what I think is the coolest sequence in the film, which is the barrel down the river sequence. So For the first time,
Wow.
check out this exclusive clip from The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug.
Even we're in the cellars. We're supposed to be leading us out, not further in. I know what I'm doing. This way. Into the barrels, quickly. Are you mad? They'll find us. No, they won't. I promise you. Please, please, you must trust me. What do we do now? Hold your breath. Hold my breath? What do you mean?
You gotta love Martin Freeman. He does so many little physical movements throughout the film that are just so priceless and funny. He's such a great Bilbo. I have to ask you, Ian McKellen said on the Today Show the other day, he thought that you are editing this film and making tweaks till the last possible day before it comes out. Is that true, or is it locked?
Well, we had the premiere a couple of days ago.
But he said even
no, well,
he said even after the premiere, he thinks you might be making tweaks.
No,
come on,
he exaggerates. You don't ever believe anything he says. It was a very compact schedule because we were shooting for 10 weeks in the middle of the year, and and even though half of that was for next year's film, but even so, it still pushed our post-production schedule back a bit, and we ended up rushing a bit at the end. I flew over here, a day or 2 days before the premiere, and I had the film in my bag. I mean, people don't realise that's what it actually comes down to. I had a plastic Pelican case with the hard drives of the movie that screened at the premiere. If something had happened to the plane, you guys would have had no premiere at all. I'm sorry, it would just.
Most valuable piece of carry-on luggage of all time. Listen, guys, we are out of time, but I want to thank Evangeline and Peter and Richard for being here, and Katie and Chan and Jennifer and Jesper and Pierre. Thanks so much, and for all of you watching. And also, I should remind you that The Hobbit, The Desolation of Smaug is in theaters next Friday, the 13th of December. You guys will all love it. Having seen it, I can say you're going to love it. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great day.
Bye.
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 Enchanté.
Nice to meet you.
But